They say silence can't hurt you. Whoever said that never sat alone in a car, parked across the street from a glowing house you're not welcome in. Gripping the steering wheel like it's the last thing keeping your lungs from collapsing. Through the tinted glass, I watched her raise her wine glass. Red dress, red lips, red everything. She was laughing like nothing in her world had ever been broken. Like the man she left in emotional freefall just hours earlier didn't even exist.
That was the moment I realized she wasn't just gone.
She had rewritten our entire story and cast me as the fool who never learned his lines. The music pulsed faintly through the closed car door. Some indie remix that probably sounded exclusive enough for a private gathering of well-connected people who toast with their eyes closed and kiss on the cheek like it means something. She belonged there. I didn't. But I had one thing left. One final sentence to say in the story.
She didn't know I was still riding and I'd already delivered it.
Long before she stepped onto the balcony. Long before she giggled at Wynn's joke. Long before her fingertips brushed that gold clasp on her purse, and fate snapped shut behind her. Because earlier that day, while she was in the shower rehearsing another lie about being too tired to talk tonight, I slipped the ring she hadn't noticed missing into a soak pouch. My ring, the same one she used to twist nervously around her finger when she was still pretending to love me. Alongside it, I placed a single folded note. It didn't scream. It whispered. Just 6 words written in trembling ink. This time, you won't find me. I zipped it into the inner pocket of her purse, the one she never checks. Not until she needs something at the worst possible moment. And now, watching from my car as she opens it, I see the exact second her world shifts.
Her hand pauses mid-motion. Her expression falters, then panic. Real, unedited panic. She stumbles back from the group like someone just slapped the air out of her. Her friend, Julie or Jenna or some polished name I was supposed to remember, reaches for her shoulder. She shrugs it off. Her eyes dart like she's searching for a ghost. Me? I was already disappearing. Not just from the parking spot, from her life. You think that's the end? It was barely the beginning, because what she did next made everything worse. She didn't scream, though I almost expected her to. She didn't faint, didn't drop the glass, didn't call out my name. But the moment her fingers brushed the velvet pouch and pulled out the ring I once slid onto her hand under a sky full of promises, something shifted. Her face, usually a mask sculpted from charm and calculation, lost all form. Her mouth parted like she was about to speak, but nothing came. She stared at the note like it was a detonator. And then, as if she were trying to undo the moment, she shoved everything back into her purse, muttered something under her breath, and darted back into the house. She didn't even look back at the group of colleagues who were now side-eyeing each other, whispering in that performative, "Oh no, is she okay?" way. The kind of whisper that isn't meant to be private, just controlled gossip. I had a good view of all of it. I didn't need to hear them. I knew exactly what they were thinking. From inside, I could see shapes moving through tall windows, shifting shadows behind curtains. I imagined her storming through the house in those pointed heels, probably looking for a quiet room, maybe a bathroom, somewhere to read the note again, somewhere she could feel in control again. But there was no control in what I left her. I didn't follow. I didn't text. I just sat there in my car and waited. Part of me thought she might call, demand an explanation, send a stream of all-caps text like she used to when I forgot to unload the dishwasher. But her phone stayed dark. That silence was louder than anything. I thought back to the day I bought that ring. Clara had picked it herself.
Technically, we were on a trip to Charleston for a friend's wedding, back when our love felt like the kind you read about in old paperbacks at dusty bookstores. She pointed to it in a small antique shop window and said, "That's the one I'd say yes to." I bought it that night after pretending I needed to run to the gas station. I kept it hidden in the glove box for 2 months before I proposed, and now it was buried in her purse like it meant nothing. I don't think I really meant to humiliate her in front of anyone. That wasn't the goal. I just wanted her to feel something. I wanted her to stop smiling like everything was fine. I wanted her to hurt in the quiet the way I had been for years. The year she started hiding her phone during dinner, the night she came home drained but somehow still had the energy to post carefully angled selfies on her private story when I wasn't included in the thing, is the moment I saw her panic. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel strong or righteous or like some cinematic hero reclaiming his self-respect. I felt hollow. I felt like the ghost of a man who had tried everything: therapy, dinners, weekend trips she bailed on, and finally gave up in the most fragile, passive way possible, by letting go without a fun. But the night wasn't done. Roughly 20 minutes after she disappeared, I saw a man rush out of the house with his blazer unbuttoned and phone to his ear. Tall, sharp jawline. Looked like someone who owned leather furniture and used the word synergy unironically. I didn't recognize him, but he clearly knew her well. Too well. He looked agitated, kept glancing over his shoulder like someone had just unloaded a truth bomb, and walked away. I sank lower in my seat. Another 10 minutes passed before she reappeared at the door. Her makeup was smudged and her hair wasn't flawless anymore. She looked human, tired, scared. She scanned the street like she was hoping to catch a glimpse of something. Maybe. But I was parked under the trees, mostly in shadow. She didn't see me. And just like that, she vanished again, this time into a car with that same guy behind the wheel. Not an Uber, not a friend. It felt too urgent, too private. I didn't move, didn't drive off. Just sat there as the house behind them shrank into silence and the party resumed like nothing had happened. Just another bump in a polished evening. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have predicted, was that later that night, she would come home and pretend like nothing happened. No mention of the ring, no mention of the note. Nothing. And that silence was worse than 1,000 screams. But if she thought this was over, she hadn't read the second note. Yes, there was a second one, and it wasn't for her. The second note wasn't written in anger. It wasn't scrolled in a fit of emotion or vengeance. It was calm, precise, and deliberate, almost detached. I wrote it on the same day as the first. But the tone couldn't have been more different. The first one was a quiet funeral to our marriage. The second was, well, a message in a bottle. Except I knew exactly who would find it. I had slipped it between the pages of a photography book sitting on the corner of our living room shelf. One she never touched, but he had a few times. Back when he was just a work friend, back when I didn't know his name but remembered his cologne lingering on the door. His name was Seth, and I'll never forget the first time I met him. It was a Thursday. Clara had invited him over for wine and appetizers, something about planning a group presentation for a sustainable design conference. I didn't even know that was a thing. He walked in like he belonged, complimented our apartment like he had already studied it, and smiled at Clara like she was more than just a colleague. I felt like I was watching a scene from a movie where everyone knew the ending but me. I offered him a beer. He took a sparkling water. Of course he did. I left the room for maybe 2 minutes to grab the cheese board she forgot in the kitchen, and when I came back, they were laughing about something, her hand lightly resting on his wrist. It wasn't intimate, exactly. It was worse. It was familiar. Since that night, the smell of citrus and cedar wood made me feel physically ill.
That's what his cologne was. That's what she smelled like when she came home late, claiming she had stayed at the office to revise some mock-ups with the team. I knew better. I always knew better. So, when I slipped that second note into the photography book titled Forgotten America, ironically fitting, I knew it wouldn't stay hidden long. Seth was due to house sit for us that weekend while Clara and I were visiting her sister in Maine. At least, that was the story Clara had told him. I was never going to Maine. She booked the trip solo, and I pretended not to care. My note to Seth wasn't long. It was just 3 lines. Check her purse. You'll find what I left behind. Maybe now you'll both stop pretending. I wanted to see what he'd do, not because I needed revenge, but because I wanted confirmation. I wanted him to realize that the man she was dragging around behind her like dead weight wasn't as clueless as he looked. That I had teeth, even if I rarely bared them. Clara came home late that night, maybe 2 hours after I saw her leave the party with Seth. She walked in quietly, carefully, like someone trying not to wake a sleeping dog they'd kicked too many times. I was already sitting on the couch, lights dimmed, TV playing some documentary I wasn't watching. She paused when she saw me, and for the first time in months, she looked nervous. "Hey," she said. Her voice was soft, cautious. "You're still up? Couldn't sleep?" I replied without looking at her. I didn't ask how the party went. I didn't ask why her mascara was smudged or why she smelled like him. I just let the silence do what it always did, wrap around us like a noose. She walked past me into the kitchen, poured herself water, stood there sipping it like she didn't know what to say, and I watched her reflection in the window above the sink. Her eyes flicked toward her purse, still slung over her shoulder. She reached into it. I turned away before I saw her find it again. I didn't need to. The next morning she was up early. She made coffee, toast, like it was just another day. No mention of anything. I played along. We were actors now, after all, and our stage was set with polite nods and quiet betrayals. I left the house shortly after she did, drove across town and parked near Seth's building. I waited. I wanted to see if he'd take the bait, if he'd crack. And then 2 hours later, he did. He showed up outside our building, alone. No flowers, no confident walk, just him, jittery, glancing around, carrying nothing but that same smug look toned down by panic. He buzzed. That let in. The moment the door closed behind him, I started the countdown. 3 hours later, Clara called me. Her voice sounded light, like she was trying way too hard. "Hey babe, thinking of grabbing takeout tonight. Thai." "Okay." I could hear him in the background. I recognized that soft cough, the clink of his ring on the granite countertop, and I knew he had read the note. Now all I had to do was wait, because soon the cracks would widen. And when they did, I'd be ready. I didn't answer her call. I didn't even let it ring through. I watched her name light up the screen. The cheerful contact photo I hadn't changed in over 6 years, and I just let it fade. Twice more. That afternoon she tried again. Once from her number, once from Seth's. I ignored both. There was nothing left to say, not the way she wanted to say it. The version of reality she was clinging to was slipping, and I didn't plan on offering her anything solid to hold on to. If she wanted answers, she could start with the one she found in her purse. And if Seth had any backbone, he'd already be unraveling the rest. I stayed in my car across the street until the lights in our apartment went off that night. At some point, I saw movement on the balcony. 2 figures in silhouette. One leaned forward, the other crossed their arms. They didn't touch, they didn't laugh. For once, the laughter was gone. That was something. The next morning was a Saturday. Normally, Clara would sleep in late and roll out of bed around 11, draped in one of my shirts. She never returned, acting like we were still 20s with brunch plans and shared playlists, but not this time. When I quietly unlocked the front door at 8:47 a.m., the place was already spotless. Seth was gone. Her purse was hanging by the door like a relic of a battle that had already been lost. She was in the kitchen standing at the counter in leggings and a hoodie I didn't recognize. No coffee brewing, no eggs sizzling. Just her holding that velvet pouch in her hand like it was ticking. Her eyes flicked up when I entered, no smile, no anger. Just dread. "Everett," she said, voice dry. "Can we talk?" I didn't respond. I walked past her into the living room and sat down. She followed after a pause, perching on the armrest instead of the couch itself. She didn't know where to land anymore. The ground under her had changed. "I found what you left," she said carefully, like she wasn't sure what version of me she was dealing with. "At the party." I nodded once. She waited for me to speak. I didn't. She swallowed. I didn't know what to say." "Not then." I didn't want to make a scene, but "You read it?" I finally asked, still not looking at her. "Yes." She paused, and Seth, he saw the second one. Ah, so he had talked. I leaned back slightly, not giving away anything, just letting the silence stretch again. "He thought it was cruel," she added quietly, leaving that for him. I blinked slowly. Interesting. I thought he'd be more offended about being exposed as someone else's well-dressed alibi. Her face flushed. "It wasn't like that, Everett." "Then what was it, Clara?" I turned to face her fully now, finally. "What exactly has this been for the last year? Secret texts, late nights, vacations where I pay for you to rest while you tell me you needed space to think. Was that all just networking?" "I didn't cheat," she snapped too quickly. "I didn't physically. Don't insult either of us by playing the technicality card." My voice cracked, and I hated how weak it sounded, but it was honest. "You gave him what you used to give me. Attention, smiles, truth. And you gave me whatever was left after you filtered your guilt through a cocktail of manipulation and distraction. I didn't mean for it to get this far," she whispered. "It started as just friendship. That's how every cliché starts." She dropped her head into her hands. "I don't know what I want anymore." I stood up slowly. "You don't get to say that after everything. Not after erasing me one quiet day at a time. I left that note because I needed to know if you could still feel something. If you'd look at that ring and remember what it meant before this whole damn marriage became a performance." She looked up, and for the first time her eyes were full of tears. "And did I pass your little test?" I shook my head. This wasn't a test. This was the final draft. The goodbye you wouldn't say out loud. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She just sat there, I searching mine for any hint that this could still be salvaged. I didn't give her one. And then her phone buzzed on the counter. A message from the guy who threw the party. She saw me glance at it. Her fingers snatched it up like she could undo the moment. Too late. Her mouth opened again, probably to craft some excuse. Maybe Wynn was just checking in, or a friend from work, or he's gay. But I didn't need the lie. I didn't even need the truth. I already knew what came next. "Don't worry," I said flatly. "I won't be here when he calls again." I grabbed my coat from the hook, the one I kept on the door like I still belonged, and stepped outside into the crisp morning light. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. I just left it open behind me because sometimes silence speaks louder than any final word. I didn't go far, just down the block to the edge of the park where we used to walk when we were still pretending to be people who fit together. I sat on the same bench where she once kissed me in the rain without warning, back when little things still made us feel big.
Back before, every conversation turned into a landmine and every silence felt like a verdict. The sun filtered through the trees like it didn't care, like the world wasn't unraveling quietly in the apartment I had just left. I stared at my phone. No calls, no texts, not even one of those half-hearted "where are you" messages she used to send when she needed something. I waited, not because I wanted her to chase me, but because I was still trying to figure out if I had the strength to finish what I started. An hour passed, then 2, and finally, just as the wind started to pick up and my coffee had gone cold in my hand, my phone busted. "Clara, can you come back, please?" Just those 5 words. I read them again and again, trying to decide what she actually meant. Did she want to talk, apologize, beg? Or was this just damage control, trying to glue the glass back together while pretending it was never shattered in the first place? I walked back slowly, dragging my feet like I was on my way to my own funeral. The street was quiet. Too quiet. When I reached the apartment, I noticed the front door wasn't just closed. It was locked from the inside. That was new. I knocked gently. Nothing. I knocked again. No answer. I texted me, "I'm outside." Nothing. Then I heard it. Muffled voices through the door, a low hum of conversation, male and female. One voice was hers, the other. I couldn't place it at first, but the rhythm, the smugness bleeding through the drywall. It was Seth. My stomach dropped. I stepped back, breath catching, and leaned against the railing like I needed it to hold me up. She had invited him back. Maybe he had never even left. Maybe the whole "can you come back" text was never meant to be an invitation. It was a trapdoor, a way to catch me off guard, or worse, to corner me with her version of closure. I didn't knock again. I just walked this time with purpose. I ended up at a motel just off the interstate, one of those places you only go to when you're out of options or out of pride. Lucky for me, I was both. The room was small, with a bed that creaked and a mini fridge that buzzed like a dying fly. But it had a lock and silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't try to fix you. The kind that just lets you sit with your pain. I laid on the bed fully clothed, phone resting on my chest, and stared at the ceiling until my eyes burned. Around midnight, the messages started. "Clara, where are you? Clara, you misunderstood. Clara, please just talk to me. Clara, he came by to talk about what you left him. I didn't invite him. Clara, please." Then a voice message. I didn't listen to it. At 2:17 a.m., she sent one more text. "Clara, if you walk away now, there's no going back." I stared at that line like it was supposed to be a threat, like I hadn't already walked away in every way that mattered. The truth is, she was right. There was no going back. Not because I didn't love her anymore. I wasn't even sure if I didn't. But because even if we tried to glue the pieces back, we'd always see the cracks. Every laugh would carry a shadow. Every touch would carry doubt. And honestly, I wasn't angry. I was tired. Tired of being the only one fighting for something while she kept rehearsing her exit. I slept poorly that night. Dreamed of keys that didn't fit, doors that wouldn't open, her smile melting into someone else's. In the morning, I woke to a single new message. "Clara, okay, if that's what you want." It wasn't what I wanted. It was just what was left. And that's when I realized this wasn't a story about betrayal. It was a story about quiet abandonment, the kind where one person leaves a little more each day until the other finally notices they're alone. But Clara wasn't done yet. She never let anyone else write the ending. And when she showed up again, it wasn't to say sorry. I was sitting in the motel lobby eating dry cereal out of a styrofoam bowl when she walked in like she still belonged everywhere I went. Clara, wearing the same black trench coat I once told her made her look like a spy from an old movie, and for a second, it almost felt like a memory I wanted to keep until she opened her mouth. "Everett," she said, soft but sharp, like she was trying not to make a scene, like I was the problem that needed containing. I didn't look up. I just kept scooping spoonfuls of soggy cornflakes like it was the only thing anchoring me to the earth. The motel clerk behind the counter barely blinked, probably used to this kind of drama. I heard the door close behind her and her heels slowly approach. "You didn't respond to any of my messages," she said, now standing beside me. "I didn't want to show up like this, but what choice did you leave me?" I finally looked at her. Her face was clean, no makeup, hair pulled back like she hadn't slept much either. For a moment, I almost thought she looked honest. But that illusion shattered as soon as she sat down across from me, folded her hands like we were in couples counseling, and tried to take control of the narrative. "You ambushed me," she began, tone shifting like she'd rehearsed this. "You embarrassed me at that party. You turned Seth into a nervous wreck. You walked out without even giving me a chance to explain." I let out a slow breath, set the spoon down, and met her gaze. "Explain what, Clara? That you and Seth were just friends? That Wen only texts you late at night because he's passionate about floor plans? That you spent the past year slowly erasing me while still making me pay the utility bills?" Her face hardened. "It's not that simple. It's never simple when someone's lying. I never cheated on you, Everett. You just emotionally relocated without leaving a forwarding address." "Right." She leaned forward, her voice lowering. "Do you think you're the only one who's been hurting? I've been screaming inside for months. You stopped trying. You stopped asking how I was. You just drifted. We both did." I blinked at her, stunned. "You think I stopped trying?" She didn't flinch. "I packed her lunch. I warmed your car in the winter. I asked how your meetings went, even when I knew they ended with drinks and selfies I never saw. I showed up. Clara, I showed up every damn day." She was silent now, maybe for the first time since she entered. I leaned back in the chair, that creaky fake leather kind that stuck to your skin no matter how cold it was, and wiped my hand down my face. "You know what hurts the most?" I said quietly. "It's not the betrayal. It's not Seth or Win or whatever other names I wasn't supposed to learn. It's that I became invisible, and the only time you looked at me again, really looked at me, was when you found that ring in your purse." She shifted in her seat, lips trembling like she wanted to say something but didn't know what version would still get her sympathy. But I was done listening to edits. I wanted the raw cut or nothing at all. "I don't want a divorce," she finally said. I stared at her. "I want to fix this," she said. "We can go to therapy. We can reset. Please just come home." There it was, the plea I expected. The rewrite attempt. The last page torn out and redrafted like the rest of our marriage could be salvaged with a different font. I stood up. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "You don't want me, Clara. You want the version of me that keeps things easy, that takes the fall quietly and lets you control the lighting." But that version died somewhere between your texts to Seth and your laughs with Win. Her eyes welled up. But I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt final. I walked past her and out into the crisp morning air, the kind that makes your breath visible and your heart feel just a little more real. I didn't know where I was going next. Maybe to my brother's place upstate. Maybe nowhere at all. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going back to a home that only existed for appearances.
As I reached my car, my phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail from Seth. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the play button. I had no idea what he would say, but something told me it wasn't what I expected. And I was right. I didn't press play right away. I sat in my car, engine still off, door half open like I couldn't decide if I was staying or going. My thumb hovered over the screen as the voicemail notification blinked slowly. It was from Seth. Yes. But it wasn't just any voicemail. The length said it all. 2 minutes and 12 seconds. That's not a, "Hey, call me back" message. That's a confession. I closed the car door, sat back, and finally tapped play. At first it was just static. Then his voice came through, quiet, like he was in a bathroom or walking somewhere isolated. "Everett, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I guess it's because I owe you more than Clara ever will. I never thought we'd end up here. And honestly, if you told me 2 years ago I'd be calling my friend's husband like this, I would have called you insane." There was a pause. I could hear him swallow. "She never told me the truth. Not all of it. She made it sound like things were already over between you two. That you were checked out, distant, just cold. I believed her. I wanted to because I wanted her. I gripped the steering wheel. But I didn't stop listening. I didn't sleep with her. Not that it makes a difference at this point, but I came close more than once. And every time she pulled back, not because she didn't want to, but because she was afraid of what you might do if you ever found out. Not out of fear of hurting you, but fear of her image being shattered, her reputation. He sighed again. That's when I realized she wasn't just confused. She was using both of us. Me for attention, you for stability. She told me she loved me. Then she told me she loved you. Then she said she didn't know what love even meant anymore. Another pause. I read your note, the one in the book. You were right. We were both pretending, and I've been thinking about it ever since. She's spiraling, man. She's not who I thought she was, and neither are you. That part stunned me. You're stronger than you think, Everett. The way you handled this, I don't know if I could have. I'm not calling to win her. I'm calling to warn you. She's unraveling fast. You may think this is over, but she's not done. She's going to do something desperate, because when someone like Clara feels the power slipping away, they don't just let go. They twist. The voicemail ended there. No goodbye, no apology, just static, then silence. I sat frozen in that motel parking lot for 10 minutes after it ended, trying to process what he said. Not about her. That part one already knew deep in my bones, but about what came next, about what Clara might do now that her version of control was crumbling. I thought I was free. I thought walking out of that apartment and rejecting her so-called truce was the final blow. But this wasn't a clean break. This was a slow bleed, and the wound hadn't closed yet. The next morning I drove back to the apartment, not to see her, not to talk, but to get the last of my things. My name was still on the lease. I figured if I didn't act now, she might use it as leverage. That's who Clara became when things didn't go her way. She didn't beg. She maneuvered. When I arrived, I noticed her car was gone. Good. I let myself in with the spare key she probably forgot I had. The apartment was pristine, unnervingly so. Every pillow fluffed, every counter wiped down. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a stage lie. I headed to the closet, pulled out my suitcase, and began packing. I wasn't sentimental. I didn't linger on the old sweatshirts or framed photos, or the notebook we used to scribble grocery lists in. I just moved. But then I saw something that made me stop cold. An envelope sitting dead center on the bed, my name written in her handwriting. I opened it slowly, heart already sinking, and pulled out two things: my wedding ring and a photograph. It was the two of us from a vacation years ago, back when things still felt simple. We were sitting on a pier, legs dangling over the edge, wind in our hair. She had written something on the back of the photo in black ink. "We could have been forever, but you stopped looking at me like I was worth saving." That wasn't a love note. That was a trap. I put the ring back in the envelope and tossed it into the suitcase without another glance. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story again, not through guilt, not through nostalgia, not through manipulation dressed up like romance. But I had no idea what she was planning next. And it turned out she was planning everything. 2 days passed after I left the apartment for the final time, and still she didn't call. No desperate text, no sobbing voicemail, nothing. And for a while that silence made me feel like I'd missed something, like maybe she had finally accepted it was over. But Seth's voice kept echoing in my head. She's not done. So I waited, half expecting a knock at the door or some dramatic public stunt or one last scene meant to pull me back into the chaos. But it never came. Instead, something unexpected happened. I started sleeping. Not just the restless kind where your body collapses and your mind runs laps around your regrets. Real sleep, dreamless, heavy, uninterrupted. I hadn't had that in months. And with each night I started waking up with this unfamiliar sensation. Calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't scanning the kitchen for her phone or checking her location when she said she was working late, or preparing myself emotionally just to sit next to her on the couch without speaking. I wasn't measuring the temperature of our marriage anymore. I had stepped outside the storm, and I wasn't soaking wet. I was dry, alive. One afternoon, while sipping coffee from a chipped mug at a diner upstate, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but something nudged me to answer. It was Clara's sister. We'd never been close, more like polite acquaintances bonded by holidays and awkward family dinners. But her voice now was gentle, measured. "I don't want to get in the middle of anything," she began, "but I thought you should know. Clara's been staying with me." I stayed quiet. "She's not well," her sister continued. "She's trying to act like she's fine, but she's unraveling a bit." The breakup hit her harder than she'll admit. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want to dissect her pain or rehash what already felt so distant. I just wanted you to know. Her sister said that she asked me not to reach out to you, but I did because she kept the ring. Not the one from the purse, the one from your original proposal. She kept it on her nightstand. Every night I thanked her. We hung up and I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel guilt. I felt grateful. Grateful that it was truly done. Clara wasn't going to chase me anymore, and I wasn't going to turn around no matter how many poetic messages she left behind. The next few weeks were simple. Quiet walks, cheap coffee, reconnecting with my brother who had no idea how bad things had gotten and welcomed me in with a couch and a fridge full of comfort food. I got a new phone, a new number, a new email. I let the old life die completely. Then one day I met someone, not romantically, just a stranger who sat beside me on a park bench, noticed the book I was reading and asked about it. Her name was Mara. She worked at a community library and talked about stories like they were living things. We laughed. We argued about whether the ending of a certain novel was hopeful or heartbreaking. She had a chipped front tooth and didn't hide it when she smiled. It didn't feel like the beginning of anything. It just felt honest. No pretending, no layers. Just two people existing in the same quiet space without needing to fill it with lies. That was enough.
And for the first time since Clara opened that purse and found the ring I left behind, I felt free. Not because I'd hurt her, not because I won, but because I chose to stop being the man who waited for love to come back like a boomerang that was never thrown. So yeah, maybe I was a fool. Maybe I held on too long. Maybe I saw her as worth saving when she wasn't even holding on to the rope. But in the end, I saved myself. And I'm okay now. More than okay. I'm finally becoming someone I can recognize.